Greetings, comic friends. We're going to do another Tales from the Vault. So, Tales from the Vault, I reach into my comic vault and pull out books that have some sort of significant meaning, either to myself personally, to comics in general, um, or just history. And that last one is what I'm going to talk about today. These books, it's a set of books. These I got a long time ago, and I got them for their significance to comic book history, and that is the three-part story of Amazing Spider-Man 96, 97, and 98. So I think these were the first books that I bought that were not specifically due to like a significant in story appearance or happening. The significance of these books is just in the medium of comics in general, and I thought it was really cool. So for those of you that don't know, these books do not have the Comic Code Authority on there. They were not approved by the Comic Code Authority. If we look at another book at a similar time, this is Amazing Spider-Man number 90. We see, where are we at? Up here, the Comic Code Authority seal. So, in this goes all the way back to the 1950s, where there was concern with comics being too violent, too gory, specifically with the horror books. Right? There was a lot of horror books with some pretty, I don't know, nasty depictions of gore and monsters and things like that. And there had been a bit of a public outcry to do something about this. So the comics industry was left to self-regulate instead of being government regulated, kind of similar to how the ESRB happened with video games. So they were left to self-regulate, and a body was created where all books could be submitted to this body, and they would either approve them or deny them based upon a set of criteria. Again, now this wasn't government regulated, so it was voluntary inclusion to get this stamped on the book, on the cover. But it gave assurances to retailers and advertisers that the content of the books had been approved for being acceptable for children. The requirements of to get the seal changed throughout the years. There's a pretty small set of them when it first happened, usually around gore, sex, and like law enforcement bodies always being portrayed in a positive light, and that crime is always punished. Were kind of the basic tenets of that first round. Drugs were not really a part of it at that time, but that would be changed as it went through. The As I said, there are multiple updates throughout its existence. It's no longer around now. I think it's completely abandoned. In 2010 was the last publisher that fell off of it. But there came a more general rule of, if it wasn't like listed out specifically, you can't do this, and so on. There was this spirit of the CCA, where books could get rejected for it. So where these books come in is that, hey puppy, was that the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare had approached Marvel Comics and Stan Lee to do an anti-drug story. Right, the purpose of the story was to be drugs are bad, okay, and we were more than happy to do so. Like, yeah, let's do that. We get a message out there to kids that drugs are bad, shouldn't do drugs or whatever. So Stan Lee decided to put that story in Amazing Spider-Man, be a 3-issue arc. Brought the Goblin back for it. which was a lot of fun. But the whole purpose was, drugs are not good. And all of the issues were rejected by the Comics Code Authority, which seems kind of weird, right? Because first of all, the point of the story is to say drugs are bad. Also, the idea was specifically requested by a body of the U.S. government to get that message out. So they were rejected, but they were like, we're going to run it anyway. Again, there was nothing holding them back from running it. It was not a government requirement to have the Comics Code Authority approve it. They just couldn't publish it without the seal. So as you can see here, none of these have the Comics Code seal on them in that upper left-hand corner. And this kind of showed that there maybe were some issues with that code, because these issues sort of embodied the essence of the code in being having a moral stance for children, and not giving this the code seems counterproductive to what the code stands for. But they basically just saw drugs are involved in this, so we're not just blanket not going to approve it. And I've actually read these yesterday, which would put them in my mind to do this video. That this would be a good Tales video to kind of talk about just the background of these books. The first one, like this one not getting approved to me is the craziest, because there's no taking of drugs. It never shows a picture or depiction of drugs. All it has is there is some random person that they say that is up on a roof, all like dizzy and whatever, and acting a fool, and them saying that they think that they're high. But there's no actual taking of drugs. But just the mere mention that drugs are a thing made it so this one wasn't approved. Now you get into some of the other issues, and yeah, like it shows Harry taking drugs, and they're nothing like. First, he's taking what appears to be like just prescription drugs. It's all pills, right? It's not like shooting anything up or smoking anything. It's pill popping. And it looks like that what he first starts taking is probably something that's prescription, but then he does get something from someone off the street, which maybe it was prescription something, maybe it was something else, I don't know. But it does actually show drugs and the taking of those pills. But it's very, very obvious that it is not in a good light. It's not doing drugs, having a great time. It's taking the drugs and immediately it being not a good time. So this sort of showed a problem with the CCA, right? Of look, the purpose of this is to make sure bad messages don't go out to kids, where this is specifically sending out a good message to kids, and it got rejected. After this, and there was some pushback, the code did get revised to say, oh, you can have depictions of drugs as long as it shows that it's not in a positive light. Which DC Comics took advantage of with their famous Green Arrow issue. Is it Denny O'Neil's? Is it 105? 85. Yeah, the Green Lantern Green Arrow issue that has is it Speedy? Speedy taking heroin, a much harsher drug than just pills. But they were able to get away with that not that long after. Because the code was revised to say, yes, you can do drugs as long as it's in a negative way. And similar to how they can depict crime, but the bad guy always has to get his comeuppance, right? It's not glorifying crime. It's saying crime is a thing, just like drugs are a thing, but they're bad. Don't do it, kids. Which makes more sense. And it did get changed. But before it did, we have these issues, which I think are really, really cool. You know, before them, after them for a while. Every issue of Amazing Spider-Man and Marvel books have that code on them. These three don't. So they stand out. I think it makes them a very important part of not just Spider-Man history, Marvel history, but comic history. The Comics Authority was a thing that existed for better or worse, and how it handled things. But to have these, and for Marvel to still publish them, right? Be like, no, we were asked to do this by a government body. The way that the code was set up, just mentioning drugs, there would be no way for them to update these at all if the message was about drugs. There's no way for them to update it and get a pass. Now, I do think at the time, I think I'd read that someone who was at the authority, the person that rejected them wasn't the normal person who would have had the final say. That person was like out or something. So maybe they would have gotten passed, but it sounds like this other person was kind of standing in temporarily, and maybe they were being extra strict because they didn't want to get in trouble or something. I don't know, but super cool part of comic history. No Comics Code Authority seal on any of the books because of mention of drugs, even though the message is kids don't do drugs. So I just think it's really cool. It's the, you know, like as I said, it's the first for me personally. It's the first set of books that I bought sort of as a meta key, right? It's not a key issue because of a first appearance or something of significance in the story. It's important to comics themselves. So I got these a long time ago. I don't remember what I had paid for them. They're in fairly good shape. I'd say the 96 is probably high mid-grade. 97 is probably high mid-grade, low high grade, and 98 is actually pretty sharp. It's a pretty high grade copy of that book. And yeah, I just got them because of that cool little factor of not having the code. Yeah, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about it, and I think a lot of people know kind of about these books and what makes them special, but it seemed like a good chance to go into a little more depth and talk about it a little bit. So let me know what you think. Do you have these books in your collection? Do you have any other books in your collection that are about comic publishing and history itself, not just the content of the story? And what are some other books, at least that you know of, maybe not that you have, but you know of, that you think are worthy of being collected, just because of their significance to the industry? Let me know down in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that stuff, and of course, don't forget to make yours Titan. This video was brought to you by Titan Comic Pressing. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Titan Comic Pressing LLC.